Okay, here we go. Okay, you've all probably heard me introduce Emily about a million times in the past because, as we all do, I got all the regular coaching when I first started being a narrator, and then I became a bit cocky and thought pretty much, well, I know it all now. And I got into a rut and I thought, well, I need coaching. So I started asking around and exploring coaches that I hadn't seen. And Emily said something on one of the Facebook groups, and it was a completely innocent comment. It was actually a nice comment, but it triggered me. It was something about it was on, you don't mind me saying this, do you, Emily?
I don't remember what it was, so I can tell
it
you.
was it was something about something to do with one of the APACs, and there was going to be some group, and it was, well, professional narrators, if you have such and such amount of books and work with such and such amount of public. And I thought, oh my God, I'm a professional, because you know how it is. When you start off, you start working for ACX and you want to work for the publishers, and there's always that feeling of, am I being taken seriously? Where am I in the hierarchy? And I mumbled and grumbled, no, that Emily Lawrence and those people that think they're all professional. And I thought, right, Emily Lawrence is the first coach I have to book then. Because if something's triggering you and it's a complete stranger and they've never even met you, then there's something you need to learn. Emily Lawrence changed my narration and my mindset 150%. I can't say enough. Um, she addressed every question I had, but she is the one that on the big groups, when a lot of people are telling you why you can't do things, Emily's the one, because there was another thread where everyone was like, you have to do this and this, and only certain people get publisher jobs. And I saw a reply from Emily Lawrence way in the bottom going, actually, don't think that's the case. I got lots of publisher jobs and didn't follow all those rules. And I like that. And I think that we can learn a lot from Emily. So let's take advantage of this time and bring all the questions we ever wanted to ask. And Emily, I have a question that I haven't ever asked you.
Sure. Actually, before you ask, can I
Yes.
just say something about the comment I made that triggered you?
Oh, yes,
Um,
yes, yes.
so I'm not gonna like go back and look on Facebook, but I hope that what I was actually saying was an experienced narrator, not professional. Because at the time, I guess I still technically am because it never happened. But at the time, we were on the APAC planning committees, and we were talking about, I was on the narrator content planning committees, and we were trying to figure out like what is the line for an experience, like content for experienced narrators as opposed to newer narrators. And I think that I had probably regurgitated what we had decided on the committee as like what we were thinking. I don't actually think you have to like have worked with publishers or done anything to be a professional. At least if I did or if I used to, I don't think that anymore.
And
So
but actually, in all fairness, and I should have said this, the comment wasn't, I don't even know if it was experienced professional, what it was, but it wasn't even a comment. It was okay, we're looking at numbers. It was like a admin thing. It was completely me that that was being triggered. And I challenge all of you to look at the things you're saying to yourselves about yourselves, because it was completely me. It was you could have been anyone saying it, and it was the most innocuous admin-y, we're just trying to get numbers here thing. But but it's and I'm noticing a lot of people when I talk about going to publishers and I'm raving about how much Emily helped me approaching publishers. And I hear so many people tell me, and I really hope Emily can talk about this, I'm not ready. And I'm not good enough. I can't go. And the same people that say, oh, I'm going through a dry spell always say, I'm afraid if I go to publishers, I'll get too much and I'm not ready, or I don't have time right now. But you were just telling me an hour ago that you're going through a dry spell and you don't have anything on. So I'm challenging everyone today to ask ourselves what we tell ourselves all the time that might not be true. Because I'm glad I told myself that story, because I wouldn't have met Emily Lawrence if I hadn't. But yeah, so Emily, tell us about you.
well, I want to know what the question was that you were going to ask me, or do you want me to introduce myself
Yeah,
first?
I want to know how you started coaching, like what brought you to coaching, because you're good at
Thank
it.
you. It's funny. I had never had any interest in coaching, and I think it's only been like a year or two. But what happened was I came back to the indie group for the first time in years. I was in the indie ACX Facebook group like back in 2016. I think I discovered it, and I found it to be such a hostile, horrible place that I instantly left. But something happened that drew me back to it, and I found that I still found it to be a really hostile place. But I was at a different point in my career that I was like, you know what, maybe I can be like a voice for positivity here. And so I stuck around and I started trying to comment, because I felt like it was important to have someone who's experienced but who didn't talk down to newer narrators, and also, let's be honest, a woman, because most of the people who comment a lot of the time are men. And so I was just trying to be like a positive force in the community. And I kept answering all these questions, and the thing that actually started me coaching was the thing that I guess I'm probably most known for as a coach, is people wanting to know how to go from working indie projects to working with publishers. And I was like, well, I did that. Like, I know how to do that. I could probably teach people how to do that. And so I kind of floated the idea on a thread, and I was like, like, would anybody be interested in coaching with me about this? And I instantly got overwhelmed with answers. And it was interesting because I had never thought of myself as a coach, and like didn't do any advertising. I made one innocuous comment and I had like several clients within an hour. So it's one of those things where I was like, oh, okay, I guess there's a need for this. I guess that I'm serving a hole in the community or whatever. And so then I started coaching, and it's not something I've ever really had to advertise, because I've been very lucky that my clients like you say wonderful things about me. And I've since expanded what I do. When I started, I was just a business coach, and then now I do business and performance. It's been a lot of fun. So I keep getting more ideas. I've started my coaching community Facebook group to facilitate group sessions and workshops and other things that I have in mind. And it's been a lot of fun, and it just kind of took off on its own. Like, it has its own life. I floated the idea once, and it's just kind of gone on wheels ever since.
And
So
you're an
that's
actress as well. Are you still acting as well? Because I know you're an actress.
you mean like on
Yeah.
camera, that kind of acting? Technically, but there's a pandemic.
Oh, yeah. So,
In theory, yes, I have a theatrical manager in LA, and in theory would go on auditions if there are auditions to be had. And I also have a literary manager and a literary agent. I also write for film and television in my copious amounts of spare time. But yeah.
so with the coaching, do you find that since doing your coaching, it's changed you and your approach to your work and you as a narrator?
Absolutely. So one of the reasons I didn't start performance coaching was because I had never actually coached with an audiobook coach. And I did that because I knew that I approached audiobook work in a different way than I've heard other coaches talk about things in like, free interviews, whatever. And nothing that they're all like fine coaches and absolutely worth coaching with. And people could learn a lot, especially if they don't have an acting background. But for me, it's just not how I approach the work. And so when I started coaching, I didn't offer performance coaching because I needed to figure out how to put into words something I'd always intuitively done. Um, and so it took me some time to like figure out my own process and how to teach that. And in the process of doing so, I was sort of observing how I approached the work, and it was interesting to like watch myself in the booth and be like, okay, what am I actually doing while I do this instead of just doing it automatically? So that was, I think I learned a lot and have become a better narrator because of that. You are not alone. I cannot tell you how many clients just in the last month or last week even that I've had who said something to the effect of, I did speed dating in the spring and everybody else has gotten work and I haven't. And you know what? Not everybody can be from the same group and say that. And they were people who had gone to speed dating the same time as other people I was clienting with. Obviously I didn't tell them that. But we're all so much in our heads, and especially as narrators, we're in our booths. We have no feedback whatsoever, except like Audible listeners who are assholes. Sorry if any Audible listeners are watching this on YouTube, but sometimes they're not.
As I check the guest list.
It's really isolating, and it's also just we're artists, and I think artists are naturally more sensitive people. But it's not just that. Everybody has stories that we tell ourselves about who we are. Everybody has, whether it's like from your childhood or like, you know, bullshit that your parents taught you, we all have these stories we tell ourselves. And it's really hard for us to see outside of that. And a lot of us have the same story. A lot of us are really afraid of rejection and failure, and a lot of us want validation because we don't know what the fuck we're doing. And I include myself in that category on some days. I think that it's totally human. It's not just a narrator thing. And so yeah, I have a ton of clients who come to me with stories about why they're not working, or how they're not good enough. And honestly, I don't know what good enough is. I know that I can recognize when somebody needs improvement, and I can help them attain that improvement, hopefully, if we have a good coaching relationship. But I don't know if there's ever a point where I'm just like, okay, you're perfect, because I think you start off pretty perfect. It's just about optimizing.
Okay, I've got some questions coming in. Let me start with the questions. Susan, are you comfortable asking Emily on camera, or
Yeah.
would you like me to ask?
Yes, I can ask. So when you were figuring out your process that came to you instinctively and you hadn't really verbalized it, what did you finally figure out?
Well, so I should put a caveat that, like, I am a highly trained actor. I have a bachelor in fine arts from NYU, and I started narrating when I was fresh out of conservatory, and I have continued my training in Los Angeles, and I also studied at RADA. Like, I've had a million acting teachers. And so that's part of the reason why I never got audiobook specific training, was because I was already really burnt out on acting training when I started. And so I kind of coalesced a lot of things that I'd learned from a lot of different people, and a lot of different places, and I wasn't necessarily thinking about what I was doing. But I am also heavily influenced by the person that I study with in Los Angeles, who is, his name is Stuart Rogers. He runs an acting studio here in LA, and I've studied with him for the last 6 years for film and TV acting. But he obviously is not a voiceover coach. And so I had to try to figure out what I was adapting for the audiobook format, and how I was doing that. And I kind of lost track of what your initial question was, but I think it was basically like, what was I doing when I was trying to figure things out?
Well, what did you arrive at
Your
own process?
So I arrived at the notion that I believe that my job as a storyteller is to live the story. Whether it's first person, third person, whatever it is, my job is to tell that story like it matters and have every word be meaningful. And the way to do that, I think, is to find the story of any story and how that resonates within me. So I have to understand the story, first of all. There's text analysis and those sorts of skills involved in understanding what you're reading in the first place, and how to approach that story. But once you're clear on what the story is, then it's about how to make that personal and real for you. Because I don't think there is a right way that anything sounds. I don't think that there's one way to narrate any book. It's like if you saw any production of My Fair Lady, it would be different every time there is a different actor in those roles. It's like theater gets done over and over again, and it's always different because people bring themselves to that role, and it changes it. And I think even though there's really only ever one audiobook done of each book, I think it's the same thing, because each reader reading that book has a different experience. And so my job is to find where that story comes alive in me, and how to do that in a way that that obviously the book is clear and the listener can understand what I'm saying, but that also feels like this is something that matters to me and I'm telling you for a reason. Does that make sense? Did that answer your question?
Yeah. Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Susan. April has a question. April, would you like to ask Emily the question, or would you prefer that I read it out?
Her connection is spotty.
Sorry?
She messaged again that her connection was spotty.
Oh, okay, I'm not seeing the bottom. Okay, I will ask the question then. Does your authentic voice determine the genres one should narrate? And then any recommendations for getting the most out of speed dating? She's never done it.
Okay. Yes. Those are two very different questions. I'm
Yeah.
going to answer the first one and then remind me if I forget the second. Okay, so the speed dating question, recommendations would be to practice, but not get in your head about it. And so I think it's good to practice it with people who can help you feel comfortable with it, because the goal of speed dating is to get who you are across and to show personality and to connect. So you don't want to just be a robot reading a script, and you don't want to be so concerned about how your hair looks that you're, not paying attention to what actually matters, which is creating a connection with these publishers who want to hire you, that they want to meet people that they want to work with. So I think the first thing is to be genuine. The second thing is to focus on, I know it's hard, especially in the current format with like the fact that you're just talking to Michelle Cobb and you don't really see the publishers, but it's about creating relationships ultimately. So don't worry about being a certain way that you think they want you to be. They want you to be you, and they want to meet you. And they're looking for a narrator just like you to help them out of a bind, because they need to find somebody to narrate this book that they don't know who to cast in.
Okay, the authentic voice. Oh, sorry, did I cut you off on the speed dating? Did you have more?
I think the only other thing I was going to say was don't put publishers on a pedestal. They're human beings. So don't get so wrapped up in the notion that they could hire you and give you jobs that you forget that like, they have mortgages and their kids throw up on them too. They're human. So just keep that in mind. If you start to feel like, oh my God, I can't talk to them, just talk to them like you talk to anyone else. The authentic voice question.
Authentic voice genres.
Do I think anyone's voice is limited by genre? No, with a caveat. I don't think everyone's voice or every artist is right for every story. And so there will be some genres that have tropes which may make you less suited, but there is as much variety within genres as there is without. So for example, mystery thriller, like if you have like a slasher horror kind of thing, it's very different than a cozy mystery, but they're all in the same genre, right? They're all mystery books. So I think that it's more important to focus on the characters and the story and find your connection to it. And your connection to whatever story you're narrating has to do with the human experience. No matter what book it is, there is something human that is happening that you can connect to. And the human experience transcends genre. You can tell the same book, the same general story in a sci-fi as you can in a YA book, if it's about, getting your father to love you, whatever. Like there are human things that will appear no matter what the genre is. So I think people get too wrapped up in genre. I don't really think it's that important.
Okay, Rebecca has thank you very much, April. Rebecca, would you like to ask Emily? You want me to ask? Seeing if she's left another message. I can ask for you. Oh, wait.
She said ask, yeah.
Oh, please ask. Okay, here we go. Is there and I get this question because I'm telling people to contact publishers. Is there a minimum number of titles you should have before even thinking about approaching publishers?
The short answer is no. There are people who they narrate their very first book for a publisher. It doesn't, your number of books is not the most important factor. Now, if you have never narrated a book and you've also never acted, or you haven't acted in 20 years since your high school productions, no, don't contact publishers. It's more about your level of skill than it is a body of work. The body of work helps. What the body of work does is it proves your dependability and credibility. And the way that audiobooks work, they hire you for a book. Most publishers don't even have a first 15. They just hire you and that's it. You go, and then you turn it in at the end, and they're stuck with whatever you did. So really, what publishers want to know is if they can trust you. And if you don't have a ton of books, there are other things that matter in terms of if they can trust you. You could have a ton of training, acting training or audiobook specific training. You could have a language or dialect skill that is more important than other things. You could have a background, like if, you know, for example, if you have a medical background, knowing that kind of terminology can be really important for a book. So there are other things that matter. Really the thing you need in order to be ready to talk to publishers is to be competitive at that level with other people who are at that level. So once you're working with publishers, you're competing with everyone else who works for publishers. You're competing with me, you're competing with Julia Whalen and Simon Vance and everyone else. We're all in the same pool. I mean, obviously there are some people who have some preferential status above that, but at the end of the day, you have to be ready to compete with everyone. So I think it's more about, is your marketing in place? Are your narration skills up to par? Don't get so caught up on the number of books. It helps, but it's not the end all be all.
Okay, thank you very much, Rebecca. Shantae, would you like to ask your question, or would you like me to ask for you?
Hi, I can ask. I wrote it out. So I'm gonna kind of read what I wrote. Okay, hi, Emily. Can you talk about how you structure your on-camera pursuits around your studio recording hours? I also live in LA. I think I have a similar background with training and acting that you do, and I know you're probably doing both. But I've been hearing from a lot of pro narrators that I notice don't really, they kind of lean more in the narrator space than the on-camera commercial film TV space. I hear so many of them say, oh, what are you going to do about your studio hours? Like, if you got something, what would you do? And you can't do both. And so I'm just curious, like, how you balance it, what you think about the possibility of it being something that, to me, it makes so much sense to be acting in a work from home type job and then press pause on what I'm doing and go and audition and come back and finish my, you know, bread and butter job. What can you speak to any of what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally. I think don't let other people tell you what matters for your life. If it's important for you to do all those things, do all those things. In terms of getting your studio hours, I mean, schedule yourself in such a way that it leaves time so that, you know, if a full-time narrator does 10 hours a week, maybe you schedule 8 hours or 6 hours so that you have time for your auditions and other things, so that you're not having a full-time job and then trying to have another full-time job on top of it. So that's really the only difference, is to schedule yourself in such a way to give yourself the room to do those other things. But there's no reason why you can't do all of it. It's just a matter of juggling it for your schedule so you don't go crazy.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Shantae. I'm outside and cars were pulling up, so I was like quickly muting. That's an interesting question, because I know when I first started narrating, I was trying to do other jobs on the side as well, and voiceover jobs going off to London. And then, do you know what I found? I think temperamentally, I wasn't suited to it, because every time I would go and do a different kind of job, I would come back and it would take me like 2 days to get back into narrating. Like, I couldn't, I'm in awe at the people that can do it. But I do think it might be a skill, because focus is hard for me. I have to keep my focus.
I think it also depends how you approach those different mediums. If you approach in a way that gets you locked into a certain, you know, like there are people who they do, you know, radio, and then they try to narrate audiobooks and they have that sort of radio announcer voice. And, you know, so I think it really just depends if you have like a mode, now I'm in this mode, now I'm in that mode, that could be hard to break. For me, I think it's all, well, everything I do is storytelling. So whether I'm acting for film, TV, or narrating a book or whatever, I don't personally do commercial voiceover or things like that, just because it does not inspire me. But I mean, hey, a paycheck's a paycheck, and for some people that's really inspiring. So like, you do you, whatever works for you. But for me personally, I don't necessarily have a struggle switching between modes, because it's all storytelling, I think. So
It's probably healthier to be that way. It's probably better for your brain to like be flexible, be able to do different things rather than not leave your flat.
you have to know the medium you're approaching, and obviously different ones have different expectations, um, but I mean, if it's something you struggle with, that's definitely something you could probably work on if you wanted to get back to doing multiple things. But if not, like, who cares? You know, if you're happy narrating, narrate.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Shantae. Is it Shantae or Shantae?
Shantae.
Shantae.
Accent on the E at the end.
Shantae, got it. Marley, would you like to ask Emily your question?
Sure. Can you guys hear me okay?
Hi, Marley.
Hi. So I know for young adult books, those are typically narrated by people in their 20s and 30s, like older people with a youthful sounding voice. But I'm 19, so I'm assuming young adult titles are what I'm mostly going to be working on. That's what I've done so far. So if someone with like an older voice can narrate down like the voices of younger characters, like stories told from that perspective, can someone with a more authentically youthful voice narrate up like characters in their 30s?
So the answer is yes. Could you potentially be hired to do those things? Potentially, yes. Early in my career, I started narrating when I was 22. So early in my career, I got hired to narrate a book that was about a group of like divorcees in their 40s. And I was not the right narrator for that book, but for whatever reason, it was an indie book, and the author liked me, and I did that book for her. So it's possible, but I think you also have to ask, like, you know, are you going to be the best person for that book? Maybe, maybe not. I think it depends on the book. But I also think that you're not limited to just YA. I think that as somebody who also has a very young sounding voice and has narrated a wide variety of genres, I mean, there's YA, there's children's, middle grade, there's cozy mysteries, usually like sort of a bright, youthful sound. There's sci-fi fantasy. There's all kinds of stuff that you could narrate. Now, if you're asking if you could play some like a story where the heroine is like in her 50s, you could, but does it matter if you don't? I mean, let me ask, is there a particular kind of book that you're thinking in mind that you would like to be able to narrate?
No, I'm just working on putting together like a more professional demo, and I'm looking for samples from books that I've read and books that don't yet have audiobooks made of them, and it's been sort of difficult to find something that like fits all my needs, but is also narrated from the perspective of somebody close to my age. It's kind of like a little bit more difficult to sort of find something that works for that. So I was wondering, like, if I want to pick a nonfiction book about feminism that's written by someone in her 30s, like, is that going to come across as inauthentic if I do it in my 19-year-old voice?
As long as you're authentic in your performance, I don't see why it would necessarily be a problem without knowing more information about the piece. But I also think that, you know, I narrated a book for Macmillan that was a biography of Elon Musk for 10-year-olds. There's all kinds of options out there. I mean, I wonder how hard you're looking to find books that do meet your natural voice. I don't think, if you want to be able to stretching beyond, then that's a different thing. But if it's just a matter of finding demo pieces that show off your voice, I mean, there's lots of options out there.
What about Lit RPG?
What about Lit RPG?
Don't they have like younger voices? Because it's all like computer kind of younger, like, and they're hot right now. They're selling like tons.
Yeah, there's a ton of options. Look at, I mean, if you want nonfiction samples, you can look at self-help for books that are aimed at teenagers. I remember narrating a book that was like helping kids with student loan debt. You know, there's a ton of options out there. But if this book about feminism really gets you going, go for it. It's a demo. It's 2 minutes. They're not going to know what it's from.
Thank you very much, Marley.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. We've got more questions. Sorry, guys, I'm having a problem with the screen. It says we have more questions, but
I can check the chat too. Let's see.
yeah, they're all talking about Griffin's dog. which we're all seeing who's like basically one of the stars of the show.
Sorry.
No, he's just so gorgeous. I mean, how could he not be a star? Okay. The genres, deadlines, Griffin's dog, Griffin's dog.
Next question is, can you talk about the process of approaching publishers?
Okay, yes.
So I can. So the basic process of approaching publishers would be to have your marketing in place. Marketing is like your website primarily, your demos. Make sure that your branding on those things is spot on, and that you have a website that leaves an impression that is very strongly unique to you, so that they look at your website, they get an immediate sense of who you are before they even listen to your demos or read your about section. And you want to have a cover letter if you're going to be submitting. Well, if you're going to meet them in person, then you also want to have like business cards and other marketing materials like that, and then probably practice like a 30-second elevator kind of pitch. But it's going to be a little bit of time before we can do that again. So if you're approaching them in the meantime and you're emailing them, you want to have a letter that talks about your training, your experience, your any milestones, awards, reviews, things like that. And you want to make sure that it's clear, concise, professional. You want to have it weighted so that the most important stuff is towards the front. And then in terms of what should be in those letters, that's really individual, but it's, think about the things that somebody who wants to hire you would want to know, and then write that basically. Without working on people one-on-one, it's hard for me to say, but that's the gist.
Actually, that brings up a point. That's what I was talking to Emily about this before we logged onto the call, because I've got so many people asking me for my template letter to publishers, and because since working with Emily, she looked at my website, she looked at my letters and everything, and she really helped me identify what I needed to say. And now I'm starting to book all these I sound like I'm like, runaway narrator here, but now I'm starting to have success, and I'm bragging because I'm excited about it, that I found this new way to do it. And people are like, oh, can you show me your template letter? I mean, it's like, guys, there isn't a magic template letter. That's why literally I booked Emily, because you have to dig out you and find the best way to present it. So you have to have somebody either you have to figure it out yourself, you have to have somebody help you personally. You can't just ask your friend for their letter that worked for them and tweak it a bit. And the same with welcome packs. I'm starting to notice that I can hand people welcome packs and letters, but it's not going to help. I mean, I could have gotten all that stuff if I wanted it. Nothing would have helped me until I sat down and looked at my stuff. I mean, do you agree, Emily, or am I?
Yeah, no, I do agree. I think that I think it's so individual, and it's maybe it's the millennial in me, but I think that everybody is a unique person, and the goal is to concisely, professionally, etc., communicate that essence of who you are with someone else. So you can copy someone's template of their letter, but it doesn't tell you what should go in that letter, and it doesn't tell you what about you publishers want to know that maybe Daniela doesn't have. Maybe you have skills and things that Daniela doesn't, and Daniela has things that you don't. And so it's about finding where your assets lie, and then convincing publishers of that. But I also think that people focus a lot on publishers, and I don't think, look, it's it pays my coaching bills, it's great, but I also don't think it's so important to be so hyper focused on publishers. I think you can have a great career as a narrator and never work with a publisher. Publishers just have they're a bulk of the industry, right? So it gives you more options, but I don't think that working with publishers should like validate you as a human being, or make you feel like you're less professional or less worthy without it. I think that you can be all those things and never work with a publisher. Working with publishers is just a great source of income and relationships.
And that's what I got from you. That's what I got from you, because before I met you, I felt horrible about my trajectory. And you were like, but you have worked for some publishers. I was like, I thought that like somebody came knocking on your door and they gave you a badge and they said, you now officially work for so and so. I didn't know that like any job you get, that it doesn't always come straight. You're not like called into HR and they hand you a welcome pack for like Harper, and like suddenly you're an important narrator and you can leave everything. And you did a lot of ACX books, didn't you, before you started working with publishers?
Yeah, I worked full-time on ACX for 4 years before I ever pursued publishers, and I only decided to make the switch to publishers because I didn't enjoy the process of working with indie authors as much, and I didn't like a lot of the books that I was working on. And now I know more tools that I could have done at that time in order to pursue authors that I did want to work with. But I just kind of was like, well, you know what? I've never done the publisher thing. Let me focus on that. And I did. And after I set the goal to work with publishers, within 1 year, I had switched almost entirely to working with publishers. And I've since worked with every single one of the larger audiobook publishers except for 2 who are still holding out on me. And but I think that it's so easy to fall into that trap of external validation. And I've worked with Harper, I've worked with Tantor, and so now I am legit. And I just think that I wish that were true. I wish that it was that easy, but I think that search for validation never ends, because once you've worked with one, then it's, well, I haven't worked with 3, then it's, well, I haven't worked with them, and I haven't gotten this audiophile review, and I haven't won an earphones, and you can always keep moving goalposts. I can tell you that from experience. If you seek outside yourself to justify your existence, you will never find what you're looking for.
Jennifer has a question for you. Jennifer, would you like to ask it, or would you like me to?
Surely you don't want a narrator use their narrator voice and ask a question. Just kidding.
Hi, and what a voice it is.
And what a
Hey,
voice.
Jennifer.
Hi, my question is, just kidding. Sorry, I'll be normal. Do you have a suggestion of steps to find a brand for yourself or for people just starting out? Like any nuggets? I know you're not going to give away the whole farm, but nuggets.
Yeah, I think that, well, I can tell you mistakes that I identify a lot, that when people first come to me, a lot of people look at things like genre, and a lot of people ask other people to define their brand for them. And I don't mean asking like me or a coach. I mean like, hey, Facebook, what does my voice sound like to you? And then you get 50 perfect strangers telling you their initial impressions of you, and it's, I think, less than helpful. I think that your brand has less to do about how other people perceive you and more about who you are. And there are other coaches in this industry who are wonderful, well-respected coaches, and I just don't always agree with how other people approach these things. So this is just my opinion. But I think that your brand, your essence, if you will, has more to do with like how your best friends see you, or like your closest relatives who you don't have a ton of baggage with, like the people who know you best, how they see you, I think is far more important than how your 100 closest acquaintances see you. And I think that's true because it's so easy to see somebody and make like easy judgments, and obviously casting directors do that too. But I think in terms of the branding that you're going to put out into the world, I think that why not show, this is who I am at my core. This is the kind of work that really inspires me. This is what I love, because they're going to see you and they're going to make their own judgments of you no matter what. But at least you're putting into the world what you want to get from it. And so I think that like this kind of thing inspires me is more important to me than, oh, you know what you should be doing? Because I don't care what other people think I should be doing. I want to do what I want to do. So that's how I approach branding.
And then that goes to Marley's question from earlier as well. It's the perfect time to get to choose what she loves.
Yeah. I think that people will listen to your voice and say, oh, you have a young voice, you should do YA. And there is truth to that. There is truth to, you know, it. While I can say there have been, in my 375 books, I can name a handful where I narrated from the point of view of an older person. The vast majority of them suited my voice. It's rare to step outside what your voice sounds like, but I think we get caught up in, oh, well, it must just be YA. But there are people, young people, I mean, you're 19. Do you know how many 19-year-olds are the lead of, you know, romance and like all kinds of various genres have young people as the leads. So don't limit yourself by this notion of, oh, well, I'm young, therefore. Or conversely, oh, well, I'm a woman, therefore I can't narrate XYZ. I'm 50 years old, therefore I can't narrate. I think that if you're a storyteller, as long as your voice is not jarringly outside what the character is, as long as you fit the character, you can narrate anything.
And that was so wise what you said. Don't limit yourself, because I can tell you from experience, you're gonna like not gonna do anything you want because you're young, and then like I think like mid-20s, you're gonna have 1 week where you're not too young, and then you're too old. Literally, you get about a week.
Well, I also, as somebody who, because I narrated a lot of books, I think at least half of my books are under a pseudonym, and they were romance books. And I don't particularly love narrating romance. And I narrated a lot of it early in my career. And I think that if you are a young woman in this industry, you'll be told you should narrate romance. And you can. I mean, I made my living on romance for years, but that was another reason that I left the indie world, was because I've been doing this for 4 years and I'd narrated like 150 books. And, you know, my mom would ask, is there something I can listen to? And I would say no, because there was nothing I wanted her to listen to. So, and I hated that feeling. I hated feeling like I couldn't share my work with, you know, people that I cared about, who didn't want to listen to me have a fake orgasm, you know? So, so I think that it shouldn't just be about what you're right for. It should also be about what inspires you as an artist, what gets you going. And you'll still get, like, I still narrate romance. You still get stuff that maybe you don't always want to do, but why not pursue the things you're passionate about? And they're in both audiobooks and all forms of entertainment anywhere that I've ever heard. People will say, well, find your niche, get niched. When you get known for this one thing, then it'll be easier to get work. And there is truth to that. That is a path that you can take. And if you are somebody who is like, I want to do this one thing, then you do that one thing and you do the hell out of that one thing. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think that it is absolutely a valid way of pursuing a career. For me, I find it very artistically unfulfilling to be pigeonholed into a specific thing. And so I think it's more about identifying the thing that is your essence across genre, across storylines, and really focus in on like a character that you're good at playing. And that character can be transported from any place, you know. I think that those things to me are more artistically fulfilling ways of presenting yourself. And I think are also paths to vibrant, wonderful careers. It's just different ways of doing it.
So thank you very much. So we've got Debs. Debs, would you like to ask Emily your question?
I can ask if you can hear me. Can you
Hi,
hear me?
Debs.
Hello. So as a British native narrator, the market is just much smaller for me, and I'm trying, and I have been successful in booking some more per finished hour gigs, but I do end up going back to royalty share, and I'm wondering if you have any kind of suggestions for me to branch out more, whether I should maybe try to learn an American accent. I mean, I have partially American accent, but I need to work on it more. And I have a number of British regional dialects, but I don't know, what do you suggest?
Well, how much energy do you put into finding authors who write, like British authors who write books that you can narrate?
So I'm on ACX, and I have got some letters to go out to authors that I found, and I've got authors that I've been working with previously. But it's all, as I say, a royalty share. It's just I'm struggling a little bit to break into that higher market. I don't know if you know what it's like in Britain, but they tend to just stick to, the publishing houses tend to stick to household names, so actresses that people know, for narrating books, and it feels like it's a bit of a closed shop.
Well, I think it's similar actually here in America for the larger titles. They'll tend to hire celebrities or very well-known narrators for those sorts of things. And I do know that I don't know a ton about the UK market, but I do know that like the union is less involved, and so the rates are not as high, and et cetera. And I am familiar with that issue. What I would say is don't rely on just what's on ACX. There is an entire UK publishing industry. I'm sure many of those authors would be happy to pay to have their book turned into an audiobook. It's about who you approach. You have to make sure that you're approaching people who have the budget, obviously, to pay you. So some of that is about researching their book to make sure that they are somebody who will likely be willing to pay you. And then it's about how you approach them and how you pitch it to them, how you convince them that audiobooks are a worthy investment and that you are the narrator for their book. So,
okay, so are you suggesting I look on Amazon and find titles that I want to do? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, definitely. I think ACX is super limited in what's posted there at a workable rate. And so you have to get good at approaching people outside of ACX and bringing them to ACX. I think and it's also great because then there's, hopefully you've convinced them to hire you before they go to ACX, and then you don't have to compete with 100 other people who can do a British accent.
Ideally, yeah.
Can I ask, Debs, are you in the UK or are you in America?
No, I'm in Cambridge in the UK.
Okay, so if you're in the UK, have you approached the production companies over here? There are a lot of production companies over here, and the publishers hire through the production companies. So you get on the roster of the company. There's White House Sound, there's Electric Breeze, there's Spoken For. Get on their rosters. Yeah,
I
you
haven't,
should
so
approach them.
that's a good avenue. Okay.
And they do, because
can I
it's over
contact you
here.
afterwards?
Yeah,
for some
contact me
names?
afterwards. And also, not only
Okay.
that, but also because Bookateur does a lot of, like, I don't know if you do thrillers, but they do psychological thrillers. I'd kill to have an English accent. There's a lot of work over here. If I find that a lot of people over here, they keep butting their heads against the American market, and they don't notice a lot of the home market. I mean, it would
That's
do
where
good
I
if
am.
you were in America to approach those people, but you've got the accents, then all you have to do is show up with the skills.
Okay, great. I'll hook up with you later if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, and I'll send
you.
you their names. There are a few of them over here. Sorry, I cut you off. Did I cut you off, Emily?
Great. You know more about the UK market than I do. So
Yeah, that's it. There's a lot here, and people don't know because we're so used to hanging out with Americans. Yeah, it's like when I first moved over here, I kept trying to eat my same American food. Finally, I just gave up and figured out, there are local things too. You can kind of take advantage of. I'd still kill for some of the American food though. Susan has another question. Susan, thanks, Debs. Thanks, Susan.
Hey, so Emily, have you ever rejected a book that a publisher sent you because you didn't like it, didn't feel?
yes. The answer is yes.
Okay.
I-
Does it ruin your reputation with the publisher? Is there a way? Okay.
So
Could you speak to that?
reasons that I've rejected books, one is I'm busy and I don't have time in my schedule. They understand that, you can't just always be available. I have also refused a couple publisher books due to content, because it was just something that I could not morally support and get behind. I was asked to partake in a book, actually like a month or so ago, that was being published by Hachette. And Hachette is one of the two publishers I've yet to work for. So it was really tempting, but it was a book about a conservative ideology on a particularly hot button, ultra conservative topic. And it was, you know, very anti-liberal perspectives, and I just didn't feel like I could morally support it. And so I turned it down, and I don't, I actually had another publisher, I posted about it on Facebook, and a producer at Hachette that I'm very friendly with messaged me and was like, don't worry about it, you did the right thing. So they get it. They really do.
Did you say it was for moral reasons, or did you? Okay.
Yeah, I basically just said, like, you know, I don't remember exactly what I said, but I'm sure it was something along the lines of, thank you so much for thinking of me. I'd really love to work with you on something else, but I just don't feel like I could, you know, that I'm the right person to bring this book to life or something like that. You know, you don't say like, this book is fucking terrible, how dare you? That might ruin your relationship. But as long as you're tactful and honest and like, hey, I'd really love to work with you, but this book is just not it, or I just can't. Or sometimes, depending on what it is, that in this case, they knew. They approached me and they were like, hey, we know that this is a problematic book. We'll even pay you more. Like, they were totally aware. They pitched it to me in a way like they were unsure if I would say yes. But sometimes there are books, like say a romance book that has some like dubious consent or other themes in it, and the publisher didn't read it, so they're just not aware. And it's okay to be like, hey, I'm really uncomfortable with this kind of thing, and they'll be like, great, we won't give it to you again. I've never heard of that actually negatively affecting anyone's career. Maybe it has, but I have not heard that.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, does anybody have any last minute questions? Have I missed somebody? I'm having a problem with the screen tonight. Oh, Robin, would you like to ask your question, or would you like me to?
Sure. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi there, Emily. My question is the follow-up to your process for approaching publishers. In the first contact with a publisher, do you think it's advisable to include an audiobook CV and a review sheet if you have one?
So CV would be a resume with a list of all of
Yeah.
your books,
Yeah.
and review sheet is
a select reviews that you've had from some of the books that you've done, either author comments, you know, raving about how great you are, or a particularly great Audible review on a particular book.
So you don't need to list the books that you've done, because they can go to Audible and they can see it. So you never need to include a resume. And also, you know, people who have been doing this for a while, like if you have 100 books, even Daniela's 130 books. Could you list all of those on a page? I mean, it would get very long.
I tried to, remember?
Yes, I do. This is actually something I see in a lot of people's websites when they're new is, you know, they have 20 books and they want to list every single one because each book is like, hey, I've done this book, and they're super proud of it. And each book feels like it adds a certain level of like, I know what I'm doing and experience. But, you know, I have 375 books. If I were to try to list them on my website, it would be totally ungainly. Or in a resume, you know, I don't know how many pages that would be. Or to even keep track of them would be a pain in the ass. And I have actually forgotten books. I've interacted with people on social media forgetting that I've narrated their books. I've narrated so many. So I think that it's unnecessary because you want to get to a point in your career where you can't name all of your books. So why point out that you can right now?
Good point.
Thank you.
Thank
Up
you.
on Audible and they can see it there. As for a review sheet, if you want to have a particularly fantastic review on your website, you can. But in general, publishers and industry people don't really care what Audible listeners think of your work, because for every good review that you put on your website, I guarantee you have at least like 5 terrible reviews, because we all do. And so everybody just kind of knows that Audible listeners don't really know what they're talking about when it comes to assessing a professional's performance. So I don't really think that if you have a review from like, obviously audiophile, that matters. If you have a review from like a larger genre blogger or something like that, I mean, those sorts of things will matter to publishers. But Audible listener reviews tend to be like, okay, who cares? And
What about comments from the authors themselves?
It depends on what it is. So generally authors are just happy to hear their words out loud. And so just being like, oh, she really brought this character to life. That, you know, that's your job as they're your client. You want to make them happy. I think that you could have an author review that does speak to something a publisher cares about, but I don't think you need it. I think that if you feel like you have nothing else to say to them, then sure, but I think that you probably have other things you could tell them that will matter more to them than that some author thought that you did a lovely job narrating their book.
Okay, good point. Thank you.
Sarah.
No one likes to hear.
I'm sorry. Thanks, Robin. Sarah, would you like to ask Emily your question?
Testimonials, I see it. Testimonials
Okay.
from authors or production companies. Production companies do matter, but it matters if it's like, if it's somebody who works in the industry that a publisher knows, that matters. So if you work with a production company on a publisher title and you get a testimonial, or if it's, you know, that kind of thing, somebody that they may have met at APAC, that matters. If it's a publisher who hired you off of ACX and no one has ever heard of, it may not hurt you, but it may not help. Unfortunate truths. It also depends on what they say. You know, if they say something that really paints you an incredibly unique light, sure, it could be good, but generally those sorts of reviews are very generic. Oh, she did a lovely job. She was professional and on time and great to work with. If it's that sort of thing, anyone could say that about you, or anyone could have someone say that about them. Hopefully, otherwise, why are you doing this job?
Yes. So that answers Jennifer's. What about my mom's review?
Yeah, sorry. I know that nobody likes to hear that. Everybody wants, because I understand that it's like, if that's all you have, then it feels shitty for me to be like, it doesn't matter. But the truth is that it's not necessarily going to hurt you, but it shows that you don't have a review from somebody who is more meaningful to them. So like, why even point it out? You know, if you don't need to have a review or testimonial on your website, you don't need to have a review or testimonial in your letter to publishers. So why point out that all you have is from somebody that they don't care about? Just leave it off. I think it does more harm than good to like make a false, or, you know, it just, if you don't need to have it, leave it out. Sorry if that upset anyone.
Well, oh my gosh, you've covered like 10 months of coaching in like 1 hour. And you thought we'd run out of questions, huh? Jennifer says it will upset her mom, but.
I apologize, Jennifer's mom. I feel like I did see a couple people make faces, so I I'm sorry, just being honest.
Thank you. I can't thank you enough. I can't thank you enough. Yeah, this is fabulous. And we will post it on the playlist. So we will all go back and listen again and again when we need to remind ourselves. A lot of people, I'm going to post on the group afterwards. I always post, thank you very much, Emily, for taking the time. If somebody thinks of a question they forgot and posts in the comments, are you okay? Maybe
Yeah, sure.
you guys don't post like 3 weeks from now. Emily might be busy doing other things by then. But like, if you have a question you forget right after the call.
You can always ask me questions, you know, quick questions. If it's like we need to have a conversation, then I'll say so. But if it's a quick question, I'm always happy to answer. I have a Facebook group for my coaching where I organize group sessions, workshops, etc. And so you can always post to me there, or shoot me a message or whatever. I am around.
Yeah, the business plan, Zoom. I have a business plan. I didn't tell you. After the business plan call, for the first time in my life, I have a proper business plan now. I'm very impressed. And I confess, I did book Emily as a panicked emergency call to talk me down from speed dating. Yeah, so I highly recommend it. I mean, we were saying before the call that some coaches, everyone in the world to get along with, you won't get along with. And then some coaches, then you find a coach like me with Emily, I'm a total fangirl. Everyone's going to find their coaches that make all the difference. But can I please encourage you, find that coach, because having somebody that can see you and see your blocks and see the things you're telling yourself that might not be true from just a different perspective, and asking your friends on Facebook to listen to your demo, they're not going to tell you the truth. Sometimes it's good that they're just, how many times have you posted your new website on Facebook and said, what do you guys think? Anybody told you it was crap and that you needed to redo the entire thing? You know what I mean? Everyone's going to love it. Emily will tell you it's crap in the nicest way.
Can I
She
ask a
loves it.
question real quick?
Yes. Yes, of
Can you
course.
can you hear me?
Yes, hi.
Can you just, Emily, tell us what you do with your coaching? Like, do you so is that what you do? Like, you help with a business plan? Do you help tweak your website? Like, what exactly? Just so I know.
Sure. I basically cover everything that has to do with audiobook performance that isn't the technical audio engineering stuff, because I don't know anything about technology. So
Okay.
I coach. I mean, if you're curious, you can go to my website, emilylawrence.com/coaching, or just emilylawrence.com and click coaching. And I outline like a bunch of things, but on the business side, I do business plans, which actually that class that Daniela took, I recorded, and it's actually on my website right now, but I was going to announce it tomorrow. So if you want, you can go buy it now. So business plans, how to go full time, how to approach publishers is a big one people come to me for. Workflow, scheduling, marketing, branding, anything that has to do with the business of audiobooks. On the performance side, I've coached people for just general audiobook performance, character development, text analysis, audition skills, really anything. And I've apparently developed a reputation for being honest. So I've had several people come to me now like, well, I hear you're going to be honest with me.
Yeah.
And that's
But
true.
in a nice way. She's not mean.
So I'm not brutally honest. I'm not mean, but I will tactfully tell you the truth, or I will try to be tactful and tell you the truth. I think people have told me that they've had coaches who just sort of nod and be like, yeah, you're great. But then they feel like, okay, but what am I doing? Then what can I change? So if I see something that I will never be like, you're horrible and this is crap. I would never say that, but I would be like, well, you know what, there's room for improvement, and here are some things that I'm seeing. And if I don't see anything, I won't say anything. But if I see room for improvement, I feel like you're hiring me as your coach. It's my responsibility to say that, and I will always tell you what I think in an honest, tactful, not mean way.
But the thing is you've done it yourself. I think that's what it is you've done it for yourself successfully. So when you told me this is what I would do if I was you, I thought to myself, it worked for her. Look at how I work and see if I can not copy what you did, but take your advice and look at myself a little bit. It's amazing.
Well, I think everybody has a unique path, and I think everybody's situations are different. So, if you're somebody who you still have a day job and you're working nights and you only have so many hours, I mean, that's a different situation than somebody who, is retired and has all day to pursue this. It's just everyone's situation is unique, and I really try hard to meet people where they are. And I always, I don't have like a coaching program that people go through. Because I don't think this is a one-size-fits-all career, and I really try to design a custom program that meets people where they are, what they need in that moment, and help them recognize their strengths, which a lot of people don't, while also helping them build up their areas of weakness or things that they could improve upon.
Thank you very much. Thanks for taking the time to meet with us tonight. Fabulous. And thank you everyone for joining the call, and the questions were brilliant as well. So I wish you all the best. I hope you don't do anything I wouldn't do. Have a wonderful week. Thanks so much. Bye, everyone. Thanks, Emily. Bye. Ba-dum-bum-bum-bum.